And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Autodesk Virtual Academy, brought to you by KETIV Technologies. I'm Nigel. I'm by Customer Success Manager here at KETIV, as well as your AVA host. Today, I'm joined by Javier Chavez. How's it going, Jav?
Good.
So Jav's been with the team for
15 years.
15 years, which means Javier knows a little bit about Inventor. So today, Jav's going to be going over something really important, modeling for facility layouts. Kind of creating those factory assets, and we'll kind of go over what factory is a little bit too, give some background on that. We're good as well. So if anyone has any questions during the session, I know Jav's going to kind of highlight it here in a couple of seconds. If you have any questions, type those into the chat panels or questions panels at any time based on which, I guess, streaming service you're using to watch us. And, let's go ahead and get started.
All right. So let's talk about what we're going to cover today, right? And in today's ABS session, we're going to talk about the overview and, creating a facility layout. Obviously, not everybody needs to do this, but there's a lot of you out there that either manage your own facilities, right? I say facilities plural because, there's a lot of times where you have a facility outside of the state or sometimes outside the country, and you're actually doing managing the machinery that gets employed there. Right? Some of you guys offer services to take your products and introduce them to maybe a customer's site, and you want to manage that existing facility, add your portion of the machinery that you're introducing there to their site. So this is really a really good sales tool in a lot of cases, and you have to do it anyways. You have to create a proposal or a bid, and even internally when you're doing this in your own facility, sometimes you have to sell it, right? You have to show people why it is you're trying to move around machinery, why it's going to be more efficient, and you want a quick way to do that. So if you're not aware, the tool comes, these facility design tools, factory design utilities, right? That's how you're going to look for them on your account, right? Are part of the manufacturing collections. So look for those. I'll talk a little bit about what it adds to your workflow in your existing Inventor, AutoCAD, Navisworks. There's quite a few things it adds, right? So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about using these assets. That's the most important part of this workflow, is creating and using these assets. And regardless of whether you're working in 2 or 3D, you'll want to go ahead and get familiar with that. That's probably the key point to all this, right? And there's a very specific way to create these assets. So we're going to go through that and give you an introduction to that. In addition, right, we have an upcoming productivity training session that goes into more detail about facility layout and space planning, right? We'll show you how to create and work with these layouts, right? And you can start a number of ways. You can start in 2D, you can start in 3D. Either way is viable. Right. We'll go into more detail about creating the assets, including, incorporating things like parameters and maybe even some iLogic as well. There's some things, if you want to create your own library of assets, you want to make sure they behave a certain way. So we'll talk about creating and classifying connectors. Okay, and that's a big deal if you want them to behave in the way that I'm going to show you here in just a moment.
Yep. And real quick before we continue here, Jav, it looks like some people are having audio issues. If you aren't having audio issues, can you tell us you can hear us? Type that in. Anybody? Awesome. So if you can't hear, let me go ahead and pause this real quick. It looks like, like instantly get 50 people who can hear. I'm just going to send this to all attendees. If at all you cannot hear, which I guess you wouldn't hear this. In the future, if you can't hear, there is a Zoom webinar toolbar at the bottom. And in that toolbar, you can select what your audio output is. So as long as you have that audio output set to something, you're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and reply to a couple of people. It was like 5 or 6 that couldn't hear. So okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were good.
Yep.
Cool. We'll edit that out of the recording.
All right. So with that said, we're going to go into a lot more detail. The productivity training session, if we go into a little bit more depth in terms of describing it, right, it's more than a 40-minute AVA session, obviously, right? It's a 4-hour training session on more advanced workflows. And obviously, if you are if you currently own any Autodesk software, it's one of the best ways to get up and running with some of these tools, because you're getting a bit more detailed training on using some of these tools. In some cases, it's just to get you up and running with AutoCAD or Inventor. In this case, we're going to go a little bit deeper and talk about this particular workflow.
Yep.
So other upcoming topics, Inventor Content Center. So if you're looking to manage your content center and you're not sure how all these little content center parts came about, you want to take a look at that. We're also going to talk about working with large assemblies, and we're constantly learning about large assemblies and how to work with them and new workflows depending on what you guys do and how you consume these large assemblies, what you plan to do with them. So if any of you out there currently don't have Streamline, we're giving you an opportunity right now to attend a free session. Okay, so we'll send out the link down below, and if you guys wanted to attend that 4-hour training session, normally it's a Streamline benefit, and if you don't have Streamline currently, ask us about that. Okay, it's a subscription benefit through KETIV, and you'll want to ask us about that. This is one of the benefits. We offer these monthly 4-hour training sessions on these advanced workflows.
Yep, and just to add a little bit on top of that, right, and Streamline, in addition to that, I'll just kind of highlight the other couple of things that people get through Streamline. Is one, KETIV here, we maintain and manage your vault setup. So that includes, checking every couple of months to make sure that all of the wheels are turning, all of the vitals are, intact, in addition to a yearly upgrade of your vault version. That's something that people used to buy kind of a la carte before. That's kind of included with the Streamline productivity training, or Streamline services now. The productivity training, I've just went over that, as well as our full Lifeline package as well. So you've got full support package. You can call myself, Hav, any of the other people here on the support team. More than happy to go ahead and answer your questions, kind of get you through some workflow hardships, so on and so forth. But if you want more information, there is info in that link. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and paste that so you guys don't have to try to copy that or screenshot this. So with that, go ahead and
Sure. So let's go ahead and get into it, right? Let's start working in AutoCAD, and I've got a couple things we can take a look at first, right? So in a situation like this, you'll typically get a floor plan from somebody, whether it's a customer or maybe you guys maintain one internally. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this this AutoCAD file. It's nothing special. It's not 3D, anything like that, but it typically starts off with something like this. And this is something that's not new. You'll put in blocks like this that represent machinery. And what's different is when you do install these factory design utilities, you'll get a new tab that shows up at the top, added into your AutoCAD, right? Whatever version you're using. In addition to having these factory utilities available to you guys, you also have other products, right? You probably have seen the list of products. One of them that you can download is AutoCAD Architecture. So I'm actually using Architecture as opposed to just regular AutoCAD or AutoCAD Mechanical, just because there's some unique functionality there that I want to show you. Yeah, so I just showed how this is basically a 2D drawing, and you're going to sort of play paper dolls and move this around. One of the benefits you'll have, or one of the things you'll want to do, is just kind of decide, well, if I've got material going through here to make a product, it might go from this station here, right, to the next, right, and it might go to maybe another station here, and it might go over here, and you're going to decide what the best way to move all that material back and forth in order to create this product. So one of the things you'll be able to do is run an analysis. This tool gives you the opportunity to basically create workstations, create a product or multiple products, and run them through these workstations, assigning them times and output that they're capable of doing. So let's just say this assembly and inspection area is capable of assembling 10, 20, 30 office desks. That's what we manufacture in this particular line. And so this adds these tools, and we can go ahead and bring these over here, some palettes here for material flow, right? And you could see some of the different stations that have been defined, and you could see how some of this material goes through here. So different objects, there's a desktop panel, there's a left-end panel. These are the things we intend to manufacture, okay? And it'll typically start off like this, where we just want to get an idea loosely, how's this material going to flow? And then from there, we can go ahead and run a couple different types of analysis. One is a machine analysis to see if maybe we're burdening one of these machines more than the other, right, according to their capacity. And you can input those capacities over here on the left-hand side. There's a number of things we can do in regards to that. So we could also run a different type of analysis, a transportation analysis, and in terms of cost and maybe energy, we can decide, okay, what's the best way to get some of these objects, back and forth to their, respective stations, because we've got multiple objects. Some need to go to the machining station, some don't, and we can get that type of analysis. Okay, so what I'm going to do in just a moment, you can see some numbers here, and it's a total travel time. So in this case, I want to go ahead and maybe make the best use. I could see a lot of crossover with paths here, and I could basically use regular AutoCAD commands to start doing sort of a what-if scenario. Okay, so I'm going to start moving this particular station, and you see the numbers update, and I can decide, well, it might be more efficient to move this particular station here instead, right? And this seems like it's going to be one of the last stations that gets touched. So maybe I move this here, and again, numbers will update. We can rerun the transportation analysis, right? And I'm basically just using good old, AutoCAD move commands. So that's part of the workflow in doing all this. And you can see I've reduced that from an hour and whatever it was a moment ago to 59 minutes. In addition, I can decide, how this is going to all move, and again, analyze that. So that's one of the first things you'll do. People are already doing this with spreadsheets and things like that. Here we have some real-time updates. So that's part of it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to another layout that's maybe a little bit further along, and I'll show you how we might, further, enhance our layouts, right? So in this particular layout, I've already got some 2D AutoCAD blocks. They're not very intelligent, okay? And the fact that I'm using, AutoCAD Architectural, none of us are architects. I don't believe that's the case anyways. And so it's kind of a pain for us to draw buildings. We're not that familiar with them. We just kind of receive them. But if you do want them in more detail, this is where this tool shines, okay? We can go ahead and bring in tools like wall tools and add additional geometry, or even trace on top of our 2D geometry to create new walls here. So you can see here I'm just picking and drawing almost like line work here. That's what it feels like I'm doing, is drawing line work. And so I just added in a wall. If I want to add a doorway, I've got tools specifically designed to help me draw openings or doorways here. Okay, so now if I kind of move back or step back for a little for a moment, we can see that a lot of this is done in 3D. Okay, so I may have started in 2D, but I could easily trace over 2D geometry and very quickly make this a 3D building. Now it's optional. It adds a little bit more a realistic feel to your layout. But you can see here again, when I rotate, what I'm most concerned about is still 2D. Okay, so I'm going to work with something called assets. This is the key part of all this, and I'm going to incorporate it into our workflow here now. And so I'll go ahead and close some of these other palettes that I don't need at the moment, and bring more of these factory asset or factory palettes here. So I'm going to go back to the factory tab, and I'll bring in my asset browser. So this is a way for me to look for and find assets. A number of ways to use this. The nice thing is here, it's kind of easy to work in 2D. You can see there's a column there I need to avoid. I can still work with my layers, all that good stuff. It's just good old AutoCAD, but this part is different. Here I have an asset library here. Some of these just come with the software. I've got system assets here. I've got some that I've customized myself, right? I've got another library here of other assets, and so I can organize these into folders. I can share them with other users, okay? And so I'm just going to look for some conveyor systems, right? And I'm going to choose here some of the ones that come with the tool. So as I look here over to the left, there are some that are available right from the software itself. There's some other ones that I may have to download. So if you notice here, there's some with a bubble. Those exist in the cloud. And so there's a ton of these here that people are populating in the cloud and adding to every day to this library. Okay, so lots of conveyance components. I'm going to go ahead and add a conveyor here, just manually, just one by one. I'm going to go ahead and add a straight conveyor here. So let's go ahead and maybe I'm going to put in the word straight. Okay. Okay, so let's add a belt conveyor. Okay, and right now it seems to behave just like a block. And so I can just go ahead and use it like a block, but it's a little bit different. For every 2D asset that I drag in, there's a 3D equivalent ready and waiting for me to use in Inventor. Okay, so I can start off in 2D, go to Inventor, and what you'll notice here is as I drag this here, it just connects like Legos, right, like magnets. And so now I need a curved conveyor. So maybe I'll do a search here for a curved conveyor. And so the behavior you're seeing is what we want to go ahead and customize. Okay, so here's a curved conveyor, and let's do a curved belt conveyor.
The belt conveyors might be right and left hub. I think they are.
Yeah, so maybe I'll take out that.
Yeah, I'm feeling they're right and left.
So over here, I have a horizontal turn, and you know, I'm choosing the wrong one here. Let's go ahead and bring this one in here. There we go. And that one also just simply connects. So I can go ahead and kind of make a, you know, connect to this other end if we need to, and you can see it kind of automatically aligns itself. Okay. So I'm starting to add these conveyors. The other way I can do this, I can simply draw P-lines or polylines and do this. So there is a way to add, you know, I'm going to add some roller conveyors here. And in this case, when I go ahead and drag this one in, it wants me to draw line work. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and make this turn, right? And right now it just looks like a polyline, doesn't have a lot of detail like this does. And it's still just 2D. So if I go and rotate it, as long as I'm in AutoCAD, it's 2D. But later on, you'll see it'll, you know, basically translate that into 3D here in just a moment. So the stuff here that I just put in, intelligent. This other stuff, not so intelligent, right? These are not assets, they're just 2D blocks, and you'll see how, you know, even in Inventor, I'll be able to work with these. So let's go ahead and send this to Inventor and find out what Inventor thinks of all this. I can sync all this to Inventor. There is a button here, and there's obviously some setup that needs to happen. It wants to close the file and to be able to synchronize all this, and I'll go ahead and save it as well. So it's currently in the process of opening this up in Inventor, and it's going to populate my Inventor model with some of that 3D geometry that is defined as assets. The 2D geometry or 2D information will remain 2D.
And the process works backwards too. So if you wanted to go from Inventor to AutoCAD for some reason, or if that's just how your workflow is, you can totally do that as well. And it'll, anything that's factory asset, right, will convert that 3D into like a 2D bird's eye of what that asset is. So we'll wait for this to load. Let me see if there's any questions we can cover while we're waiting for this.
Yeah, and you can see it populating some of the stuff I just created in the background there, which is pretty cool. It's just drawing it for you.
Yep. How do I install Factory? So Factory is another product in the collection. It's the only way you can get it now is in the Product Design and Manufacturing collection, or if you had Factory Design Suite from before. You just go into your Autodesk account and you install it. It's kind of like an add-in on top of Inventor and AutoCAD. In AutoCAD specifically, it's going to be mechanical architecture. I think that's it.
Yeah, so with that said, you know, I now am in my 3D version of this, right? It inserted the asset portion of it. And, you know, to be honest with you, I want to go ahead and update this to be a little bit more modern in terms of functionality. I want to replace my good old, 2D AutoCAD blocks with 3D assets. So I have the same asset browser here, except when I utilize it here, it inserts the 3D version of what we saw just a moment ago. So again, I'm going to do a search for assets like conveyors.
Yeah, and don't think that this is just like limited to factory things because it's called factory design utilities. I've seen people like, space plan their office with this, right? And
That's
put
correct.
all their desks and cubicles around so they can fit as many people into their space comfortably as possible, so on and so forth. So
yeah. And by the way, before I go too much further, you'll notice in this particular type of asset where I, created a polyline, it's called a chain asset. It used standard assets along the way. So standard 96-inch or 102-inch, whatever that is. And then standard curve. But the ones that are not standard are here highlighted in red, just so that you can see, yeah, we're using a non-standard custom conveyor. And you can create these assets to behave the same way. Okay, so in this case here, I want to go ahead and do something similar. And you can see, again, I have, access to the cloud assets that I had just a moment ago. So I'm going to find some here that are sitting here locally. In fact, sometimes it's a little bit easier. Instead of just searching, I'm going to go ahead and browse. And, you can see the ones that are loaded here locally. Okay, so they're organized into these folders. So it might be easier to look at these this way. And there's my chain asset. This is all stuff that's here local. I'm going to go ahead and drag it over. Okay, so right here, it wants to connect to these same ones. Okay, and in this case here, I want to basically just kind of overlay these on top. Right, and I can, snap to, a lot of this geometry. There are snap tools. So I can snap to the floor, snap to, vertex or edges or the DWG file that's underlaid underneath this. So I don't know if you realize that, but there is an AutoCAD file on this floor, and it recognizes, hey, where's that floor? It's right here. So we can certainly place it or snap it right here, and then I get tools that'll allow me to adjust the location or the angle. Okay. So I'll right-click and choose Done. I got a sort of a merge type conveyor here that I need to add in. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in a merge conveyor. And from here, it's just going to sort of snap together. Okay. So what we're looking for, right, and I can go ahead, is to build basically this whole facility out and, utilize it with assets. And I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't have to mate it to the floor. It simply behaves that way because of an asset publishing process that we're going to go through in a minute. Your regular assemblies and stuff, if you just use the assemble tool and places here, you're going to have to use regular mate constraints. You drag and drop it from the asset browser, it's going to be a lot easier. Okay, if for some reason, this is most beneficial when you have something that's repeatable, that's usable over and over again. So I know I'm going to use these conveyors in the next project, in the next project. Maybe that's what I build, and I do this as a service for my customers, is sort of lay out the best location for our conveyors and our machinery. Okay, you're going to have one-off machines. So here's an example of something, and this is something you'll be able to do without publishing to anything. We can go to our factory tab, right? And we can insert these components a little bit differently. So let me go ahead and they move the tool here just to, so let's see if I can go ahead and find it. There we go. So insert model, right? We can go ahead and just bring in a model as opposed to an asset. Maybe it's a one-time use deal, and I can go ahead and insert this model. And when you use this command as opposed to the place component command, it'll behave differently, right? You got options to also insert it from Vault, so it's Vault enabled, it's Vault aware. But here I'm going to go ahead and find this blower assembly here. And as I bring it in, it's a 3D model, and it hasn't been published as an asset, but it still lands on the floor. And as I go ahead and maybe place it here, it's this object here that we see here. As I go ahead and place it, it doesn't necessarily know what's supposed to land on the floor. So you get options here to basically have the X, Y, Z planes sort of represent how it sits or lays on the floor, right? And so with that said, this is the right orientation. I can go ahead and place this and then use this tool to start orienting it correctly, right? So it's going to be something like this. And then I can go ahead, there's also some other tools to sort of control where this is going to snap to on the floor. Okay, so you could still do this even without assets. The main thing we want to do though is show you how to create these assets. Okay, so it all starts off with a model. And obviously, you know, this conveyor system has got a motor, it's got multiple legs and lots of material, right? You don't want to bring in a assembly with all of its, you know, baggage into here. So what you're going to do instead is you're going to build a simplified version of the model. And so in this case here, I have a straight conveyor, right? This is a single part model, and it might have multiple bodies possibly, but it represents a conveyor. It doesn't have all the internals or, again, all that extra weight. It's very lightweight, but it gives me an idea as to how much space this takes up. Okay, so in addition, we've got some work points here, and we're going to go ahead and turn those into ways to connect to other conveyor systems. Okay, so the way that happens, right, we go through an authoring process, and on the if you've got factory assigned, you'll have this create asset tab, and this is the tool that's going to help you publish this as that. All right, so we'll go through this process of creating an asset. You can go through this from left to right. You can see there's parameters here that control the length, the height, and the width, the motor, whether it's going to be on or off, okay? And these are just parameters you are already used to modeling, right? So if you want to be able to control it and create different lengths of this conveyor, right, add that parameter. If you want to control or be able to have different heights for this conveyor, again, add that parameter. Add everything that may or may not change. This is going to end up being kind of like an iPart, okay, that's configurable, and you can create rules for that. So I'll show you another example in just a moment. So, okay, first things first, we're going to go ahead and create a landing surface. It may or may not know what the bottom of this is, and so you basically, you know, pick a surface. So you can basically pick any surface you want. If I want to go ahead and pick, you know, this this particular face here, that could be the landing surface. In this case here, we've already selected one of the bottom feet. They're all at the same level, and that's our landing surface, okay? In addition, right, we want to define connectors. So when we click define connectors, we can snap to these work points. We do have to tell it which way is up and which way is out. So as we go ahead and create this connector here that we're going to utilize at some point to connect to something else, the red arrow needs to point away from the geometry laterally. So I can click the red arrow, I just pick the face, and that told it to go, you know, away from the conveyor. It also needs to know which way is up. So this blue arrow represents the up direction, right? And we can pick a face or an edge and tell it which way is up, okay? The green sort of doesn't matter. The red and the blue are the most important ones, okay? So that one's defined, and there's a little green dot there to show that. You could do the same thing on the other side, wherever it's going to connect to something else. So in this case, it connects at both ends. We've got those. Okay. So landing surface, define a connector. You can embed properties in here. So when I click here, we can sort of, you know, create a part number that's maybe a little bit more intelligent. We can create formulas that maybe include the length, height, so that we get a part number description that's a little bit smarter. So in this case here, you can see here we've got a formula that says conveyor, right, equals conveyor, take the length parameter and the width parameter at the moment and make a unique description for us. You could do something similar with the part number, right? So we get to control all of this information here, and even control how it's going to show up in AutoCAD. So right now, this will go into whatever layer you're in AutoCAD. But if you want to create a layer and say, you know, call this a conveyor layer and put it on a blue layer, you can. You can say, look, let's specify a layer for the asset when it's in AutoCAD. You can give this layer name, conveyor, right, and make it a specific color. This will also really take place in 3D as well. So this will be something new for you. You'll also have 3D layers. Okay, so I'm not going to do that in this case. There's more properties you can add here to the file. And if we continue here, you can create a unique 2D sketch for this so that when it gets used in 2D, you don't necessarily maybe get the top view. Maybe you get just a very simple rectangle. I like the more detailed view that we're going to get, so I'm going to leave that out for right now. Okay, so more things we need to do. We need to classify this as a conveyor. So there's some classification that occurs here that tells it to behave a certain way when it connects to other connectors. If you have something outside of this list, a special type of geometry, you might need to customize this a little bit. But it tells it how to behave. And there's already a pretty good list here of fairly standardized stuff. I got a couple double entries here, electrical, and that's just because I have both 2018 factory design utilities and 2019. So that's why I'm seeing that there. So this has already been classified as a conveyor. And even within the classification, let's go back to that. I need to tell it, is it a normal conveyor? Is it an inclined conveyor or a spiral? Because that changes the behavior. So I probably need to take care of that here. Okay. And there's lots of options here to customize behavior. So for right now, I just want to publish it. And I'll go through this again. I'll show you another example. One of the best things you can do, though, is go through a guide here. Okay. There is a guide that talks about every one of these steps. Some of these are optional, and it can walk you through this process. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that. And really the last part of this is publishing this. Okay. So yeah, it says it needs to be saved. So yes, I'll go ahead and save it. Okay. And I've got a couple options. I can put it in this folder here or my user asset folder. I can also maybe put this in a another folder, subfolder inside of it. I'm free to create those. I can publish this to the cloud, or I can also publish it to Vault if I'm using Vault. Okay. When I do this, I'm going to go and put it in my user assets folder here. I'm going to go and call this my JC conveyor straight. It's going to create a 3D version of this. Okay. It can also generate a Navisworks model. And it's going to create a 2D version of this. This is the part where it's just going to take a snapshot of the top view and show me the line work that exists with that top view. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click OK. All right, we'll let that publish, and I'll show you just another couple examples that are going to be maybe, I think, a little bit smarter, a little bit more sophisticated than this one is. So any questions coming up so far?
There's a couple of them for sure. Let's see here.
Okay. In the meanwhile, I'll do the same thing here for this curved one. So what were some of the questions that have come up?
No worries. While you chug away on that, I'll go ahead and start addressing some of these questions. Let's see here. Could you do something similar in Revit as opposed to AutoCAD Architecture? In other words, can you utilize the assets you create in Revit in a similar way? So the workflow between Inventor and Revit is a little bit different. If you need to use Revit because you need to get that like architectural file back to, the architect, there's a completely different workflow for that. Let us know and we can kind of talk you through and walk you through what that looks like. It'll be really interesting to see what your needs are specifically. And then we can, figure it out that way. You're going to use the BIM content probably as opposed to something like this.
Yep. So I've done, 2 of these now. I have a straight version and a curved version, and I'm also going to do one more here. So I wanted to highlight this one because I think it's a little more interesting. There's some iLogic here, and let's see, is this the right model? Actually, not the right model. So let me go and open up the right one. Okay. So I'll use this one as a starting point. Yeah, and I meant to get all of this out here. So with that said, Okay, so this one's a little bit more interesting. This one has some iLogic built into it. So I can show you what this does in a form. And basically, you don't really get to decide what the height, the length, or the depth is. It's all predicated on the number of bins you want in this storage cabinet. So if you want, 5 bins, right, the height changes. So this is here as just an indicator. It used to be 72 inches. Now it's 60 inches. And obviously, if I change it to 4, it's just here to show you what the current size is. If I go 3 bins wide, it's 36 inches. They called it the length. I would have called it the width. And if I make it 6, it's obviously going to get wider. So the parameters here, the important ones are the height and the width. Okay. And that'll be part of the way we incorporate this into an asset. So it's just one of these things that we buy, we put on the floor, we provide to our customers or maybe to our facility, right? So same process, we go through the asset builder and we go through and publish it. Some of these parameters already have checks next to them. So if you want to see them, if you want to be able to adjust them, you'll put checks next to them. But we already know with this one, the length and the height and stuff don't really get adjusted. It's the bin that we're going to work with, okay? In addition, we can change the material, and the material will change the color of this and the bin color. Okay, so again, we're going to tell it where the landing surface is, right? And that's going to be down at the bottom there. We could also additionally, tell it a few other things as well, like, how to insert this. In this case, I think I'm good. And I'm going to define connectors, okay? So you don't necessarily need a work point. It will find the center of a surface, okay? And so again, the red is already pointing away, right? And I can go ahead and tell it that up is in this direction, and I've got a connector. Okay, so I'll click OK. Connector on one side, connector on side number 2. Okay, it will snap to the vertexes as well as that middle face. Okay, so red arrow, beautiful, it's already in the right direction. The blue arrow, not so much. I need to tell it to go point in this up direction. Okay, and so, I can continue filling out some of the asset properties, things like that. I can go ahead and classify it as a very specific type of object. I had to create this one myself. Okay, a storage bin classification, so that when I connect it to other storage bins, I want them to all be the same height or the same type. I want them to work a certain way, and you'll see that here in just a moment. So again, I'll go ahead and publish it one more time. Okay, and I'm going to use this as the KETIV storage rack. I've already published it once, so just to save a little bit of time, I'll go ahead and cancel out of this. Okay, so let's go back to our layout. Let's go. There we go. So I'm now ready to use this and start laying out some of this stuff. You can see I very quickly snap this together right on top of the existing geometry. Later on, when I go back to AutoCAD, I can get rid of the blocks that are going to lie underneath this. But now it's time to test out my assets. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of browse around here, go up a few levels here, and I'm going to go to my user assets. Okay, here's the one I previously published. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that one here. Okay. Okay, and because I, publish certain bits of information about it, I have access to that. So I'm going to hit escape for just a sec and just drop it in as is, not position it, but I can go ahead and select it. And those properties, okay, that we were going to publish along with this, the bin size, the height, the width, all that stuff, it shows up. Keep in mind, this one is really controlled by the bins. The number of bins. So how many bins high do I want this? I can go to and tell it to make this one 4 and make the bins maybe a different color. Let's go ahead and make these blue. Okay. Now at the end of this, I have an update button, and that's how it knows to update those couple parameters here to work that way. Okay. Now, when I go ahead and grab, let's go and change maybe one more thing. Let's go ahead and change the width. Let's go ahead and make this 6 wide and tell it to update. Okay. So the next one I drop in, you know, it can be a different one. If it's not connected, it could just kind of live out here and be completely separate, no relationship to the other one at all. Okay. Or I can go ahead and drag this over. Okay. And if I connect it, right, the classification for the connector tells it that, you know, we need to relate the height one to another. Maybe not the bin color, but we're going to relate the height so that they stay the same. Right? We don't want this different level. And the same is true for these conveyor systems that are already built into the software, right? These are the ones that come with this. If I change the height of this from 30 inches, and this is infinitely variable, I don't think they put any limits on this one, but I'm going to go ahead and make this 45, which is kind of an odd number, but I'm going to go ahead and update that one there. And if we want this type of behavior with this, then we've got it. Right? So it's thinking, it'll come back here in just a second, and there it is. It actually made a different size, and it knows that you can't connect conveyors one to another and have this drop off. It updated all the other connected conveyors. Okay, same thing applies for the width. Right, I'll go ahead and make this maybe 36 inches wide, right? And you cannot connect a 36-inch wide conveyor to a 24-inch or whatever it was before. And so it'll sit there and update for just a second, and then it'll come back, and you can see all of them have been updated as long as they're connected. Okay, so it's kind of like playing Legos here, and it gives you a good way to quickly create this layout. The last thing I'll do, just to kind of show, you know, how this goes back and forth between AutoCAD and Inventor, right, is sync it the other way. Yeah, so let's go and send this back. And obviously, if I would have deleted some of these, we'd get the AutoCAD updating update to happen and delete some of the components that we got rid of in 3D.
Yep, and while Hav is doing this, we'll answer some questions. Are there any downsides for using factory only in Inventor or only in AutoCAD? That's a good question.
Yeah, so honestly, it depends on, there's no downsides really. I mean, if you only do it in AutoCAD, you're never going to get a 3D model. You're never really going to be able to walk through it. And it's done now. I'm going to have it open it in AutoCAD. But you'll never be able to walk through it. And that's one of the other things you'll want to do is at some point, if you're trying to sell it or trying to, you know, have people look at this and buy off on it. And you can see my updated geometry. This one in particular had some notes here that's adding. But anyways, the main reason, right, you want to do it in 3D is for that, to be able to then do a walkthrough later. And there's workflows for that, and especially in a presentation environment. Now, what you can do is stick to 3D only and never even start with AutoCAD. But there's so many people that have to work with architects and stuff and get
legacy
A2D
data.
AutoCAD legacy data.
Yep.
And there's one more situation where, okay, if you have to work with a municipality and you literally have to turn in an AutoCAD drawing to them because they don't have Inventor, but they do have AutoCAD, then it makes sense to sync it back to 2D.
Yep, so it helps a ton. Yeah, I think the majority of the cases where I have people working on this workflow or similar workflows where they need the AutoCAD file as like an underlay in their Inventor files is if they have like some kind of legacy file, right? So someone modeled the inside of my building before, and so I know where all of the columns are, where all of the walls, doors, etc. are. They bring that file into Inventor and then they model their 3D around that. So
yeah. So just a quick recap here, guys. We wanted to give you a quick overview of the workflow, and I can get a bit deeper into the workflow because there's other things you can do, including, you know, go to Navisworks and walk through it and create a video of it and send it out to somebody. We can go a bit deeper into that. But we did go over, how you can, use those assets in 2D or 3D, sync them back and forth, and then creating or publishing those assets. Those assets that I just created are now available in AutoCAD. And I could use my conveyor, or I can use those bins now in 2D and do something very quick. Because we all know that, one of the benefits of AutoCAD is it's fairly lightweight, it's quick to do. And when you're actually ready, that's when you can sync back to AutoCAD and make this a little bit more interesting. Okay, so just quick reminder again, we've got that upcoming productivity training on this topic specifically. We're going to go into more details on creating these layouts, especially once you get into large layouts. You're going to sort of want to divide and conquer and create what are called sub layouts, things like that. We'll go into more detail about creating these assets and incorporating those parameters, including maybe creating some from scratch. And we'll also take a quick peek at, okay, now I've got a layout. I need to propose this to management or sell it to a customer. I want to send them a video or walk them through it live in a collaboration tool. What do I do? So we can do that via Navisworks. And of course, the other way you collaborate is just working with other contractors. So you can do things like interference checking and find out, hey, Mr. Structural Engineer, why is this column here? And see if it interferes with what you've done in your assemblies.
Yeah, if you have questions about the productivity training, obviously, here's some information on it. We do monthly 4-hour training sessions on more advanced workflows in the product design manufacturing collection, as well as Vault Pro. If you need more information on that, go ahead and give us a call. If you want to enter a free session, which is, kind of awesome. It's a 4-hour free training. Let us know. You can go ahead and click the link that I posted in the chat earlier to go ahead and take a look, or just reach out to us, send us an email, and we can figure out everything from there.
Yeah, and some people I know I'm looking at a question right now. I didn't want to confuse anybody by using AutoCAD Architecture. Those assets are available in any version of AutoCAD that's installed. As you install the utilities, except for electrical.
And maybe plant and P&ID.
And even then, electrical, I think, still adds it in the AutoCAD, just if you ever launch it as basic AutoCAD.
If you launch the vanilla profile, you'll get them.
Yeah, so so the difference would be that, you just won't get to create those walls and things like that in 3D that we did a little bit earlier, but you may not need them, right? And so in some cases, there are customers that have AutoCAD users and they do all the work in AutoCAD. They don't even know Inventor, and they hand it off to somebody else to do the final 3D model. And as long as they access the same file and they also have factory, then that 3D user then starts to do the syncing to Inventor and starts to do some extra manipulation there.
Yep.
Okay. So yes, it's not Inventor alone. Somebody asked, so we need factory design? Yes. It's an add-on on top of this. And it'll add into Navisworks, and it'll create some unique tools there as well.
Yep, Navisworks, Inventor, and AutoCAD are the 3 tools that Factory sits on top of to be able to do all this. If you have the collection already,
I think it's the only way to get it.
That's the only way to get it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have a collection, you have it already. A lot of people don't know that. It's just one of those things that is like the 15 things that you've got. Most people are like, I only need the Inventor, and then they find out about this and get really surprised. So that's just a couple of things. As we're monitoring through questions, we're going to kind of knock these out pretty quickly here. Val's asking, Val wants to create some layouts with assets and bring them into 3ds Max. Is there a way to use these assets and have labels come across to Max with labels, or a way to use 3D assets to align with the layout created in Inventor? So the Max and Inventor workflow is a little bit different. Reach out to us specifically, and we can talk you through that based on what exactly you're trying to do, Val. So just reach out to us via email, and we can go ahead and address that differently as well. This question's coming up a lot, and I'm getting it from like direct chats and questions and in the Zoom chat, is Inventor and Revit functionality. So the way that Inventor and Revit works, and Hav, correct me if I get out of line here,
sure,
is in Inventor, you can certainly send stuff over to Revit, but you use what's called like the BIM content or the BIM exchange to be able to move that stuff from Inventor to Revit. So you don't use this factory workflow to do that. You create BIM content in Inventor, and then you send it over. We've got a couple of webcasts on the Revit to Inventor and Inventor to Revit workflow. If you need that information, let me know and I can help find that for you, or you can look on our YouTube channel. Those exist as well. But if you have questions about Revit and Inventor, let us know. We work with a lot of customers who build building products. So, do you see anything there, Hav, specifically?
I did. I thought I saw somebody add in another question there.
Yep. Let's see.
Just taking a quick peek. Okay. So I think it was Eric. And it was a sort of the Revit thing away, in a way. Just to answer your question, Eric, the question was, if I can use Revit in the same way with links and specified offsets and those little connectors, and the quick answer is no. You don't. You typically will do this in here and then export to whatever it is you want to.
An RFA file.
Yeah, to an RFA file, or get this into one of the other tools. That layout functionality is limited to it being inside of AutoCAD, Navisworks, and Inventor. You could certainly bring in a Revit model and work with that building as a base and start to place your machinery around there. You can
or
certainly
point
do that.
clouds too, which is a huge one.
Yeah, that's another interesting workflow, right? Okay, let's do it. I don't know. I have drawings of this building, but they're not accurate. Let's do a scan. And you can bring in that point cloud and do the same thing we just did, but within a point cloud of the building. And now you know where those wires are hanging down from the ceiling and that you're going to interfere with, or the ducting that's up there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I did a webcast on that probably a year ago. So find one of those and you can listen to my voice for an hour. Let's see here. How flexible is the material flow? Long answer, or I guess short answer, is the material flow in in Factory is pretty flexible. You can edit a couple of things in terms of time, energy usage, etc.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at it specifically to answer some of those questions, though, Claudio.
Yeah. And so so it's kind of a broad question, but it's not meant to replace some of the other tools that do tack times and stuff for individual workstations. It doesn't get that granular.
Yep.
It does it from a more of a larger overview to give you an idea as to where you want to place machines, or what machines you maybe want to replace with something more automated, like a CNC machine. It's a bit higher level and doesn't get as granular as getting into the individual workstation.
Yeah, if you want to do like process analysis and stuff, that's completely different, and we can get into that in another webcast. I don't know if Hav probably won't do that one. That'll probably be Nathan. But let's continue going through questions. Like I said, if you have any, go ahead and type those in. We'll go ahead and answer those. There's a couple more here that I want to address. Where can I find information on the upcoming factory training and fees for that? So Hazem, there are a couple of links that we've posted in the chat. You can go ahead and click through there, or email one of us back from like the emails that you get from the invites to all of this. And then we can figure out how to get you in. And what that cost is, and how you can get the Streamline membership, so on and so forth. You import a PNID file into Factory and start building your factory from that file. That pinpoints your equipment at all. That's different. It really depends on what you're trying to do with this PNID file. Generally, I would do that workflow in Plant, and I wouldn't do it in Inventor. And if you have to bring over models from Inventor, I would send those to Plant.
Correct.
Jeff did a Plant webinar literally for this purpose last week. So go ahead and check our YouTube channel for that, Greg. And if you have any more questions about that, Greg, let us know, and we can kind of clarify anything else if we didn't answer your question completely. Do assets configured to different sizes create new file names for each configuration?
Yes. I didn't show that, but absolutely, and it puts it in a very specific folder. That's one of the things we'll talk about in the productivity training, because you'll want to be aware of that and how to manage that. And there's certain parts of that you can control, and there's certain parts of it you can't. So you just want to be aware.
Yep, and you can vault all this stuff too. If you use Vault in Factory, there is some setup to be had, because you have to put your asset library somewhere.
Yeah, you just want to make Vault aware that you're using Factory. And this is where my factory assets are going to go.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, but just make sure that you do it, or else you'll run into some issues.
A lot of this will be in the help file specifically for the utilities, and there is a separate pull down for help and factory.
Yep. All right. I think I've gone through just about all of them. I'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so to ask any more questions that you guys do have. Like I said, if you have any further questions, or you think that, you know, you're going to write some sort of novel as a question, have a few to answer, send those to us via email, and we'll go ahead and address those either via phone call, or we'll just reply to that particular email. It looks like we're pretty good here. I just want to reiterate again, today we did we got through it about an hour of going through some of the factory design workflow. Hav went through a lot of the modeling. He went through a little bit of the process as well, to figure out how long it's going to take to move things around your factory, so on and so forth. Just remember that this is only an hour, and there's like 3 more hours of stuff. I don't even know if Hav's going to be able to get everything he would like to get done.
Yeah, normally like a full class would be like a good solid 2 days.
Yep.
But I think we can get people really jump-started on the basics, which is doing that layout manipulation and finding out where things fit, where they don't fit in the productivity training.
Exactly. And then Ken's asking, can you let us know ahead of time for each week's subject? We certainly can. Those emails, reminders go out via email the day before the webcast does. If you want to look, you can also like Google KETIV AVA, and that'll get us to your landing page where we have, the next couple of sessions laid out for AVA specifically. But right now, I want to pull the schedule on my screen for the ones coming up here in the future, and I'll give you the next 3. So if you want to write these down, you guys can write these down. First one, next Thursday, edit the custom content center in Inventor. Cameron Wetton, one of our Inventor instructors, is going to be going over that. The week after that is going to be generative design. We're going to be going over some generative design in Fusion 360, a cool new way to model stuff, uses some simulation to be able to, make your design look super organic.
And I'm going to go ahead and bring this on the screen. If you go to if you Google KETIV AVA and go to the part of our website that specifically looks at that, you can see the next session is going to be editing content center.
Yep. And this gets updated every week. So, yeah. And then the one after that, which is at the end of March, the last session in March, is going to be going over iParts specifically in Inventor. So for those of you who want to use iParts, most commonly used for things like content center, that end of March. So again, I'd like to thank Hav for being here today, going over some of this. Like I said, we have a full-blown productivity training session going over an extension of what Hav went over today in 2 weeks. If you want to go ahead and join that session, let us know, and we can get you a special 1 session pass. I know some people have used theirs already for other sessions, but let me know and I'll see if I can pull some strings for you. Bam. Thanks again, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon, and have a great Thursday. Bye-bye.